Okay, everyone, my name is Tamia, and today I'd like to talk a little more on events both on and outside of Discord, as well as what the ambassador role means to me. When we think of the word ambassador, the first thing that comes to mind is a representative or promoter of something. But that's not all you are. You're the catalyst for change within your chapters and communities, the connectors and role models that can inspire other members through collaboration. This is where engagement comes into play. Engagement helps us build stronger chapters within the Golden Key community. It creates bonds, keeps members active and motivated, and makes Golden Key more than just a name on a certificate. It becomes a real living experience. Sometimes all it takes is a simple message or call to spark collaboration. Whether you're a current student or alumni, I'd like to encourage each of you to reach out to your chapters. This will show that you care and that Golden Key is present. Connecting with your chapter, either through social media or even an email, can allow you to find out more about events they may be planning and the role that you can play in that. Now, I know a lot of us are busy with work or school assignments. I know I still have a few to complete, but helping out with chapter-hosted events, or even just attending them can really help Golden Key become more visible in our local communities. Also, I would just like to point out that attending an in-person event and sharing it on Instagram does count towards your LinkedIn recommendation letter. So, chapter-hosted events. These are events like food drives, campus tutoring sessions, clothing donations in winter, and even alumni panels, where you can connect with other fellow graduates in your chapter. Some of these events will appear on the Golden Key website. If you log in, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see an events tab. Now, I couldn't really find some upcoming examples for you guys today, but I would like to show you this one from last year. So last year, the University of Mississippi partnered with the Adopt a Basket Fund organization. This was to create Thanksgiving baskets for students and faculty that couldn't afford their own. As you can see, the location, start and end times, even the contact information is there on the site, so it makes it easier for you to attend or reach out. These events show that the current Golden Key chapters are more than just the top 15% of the class. They care about their communities. Now back to Discord. While events beyond Discord show our communities we care, Discord is still a powerful tool. It allows us to connect globally and support each other here online. Remember, as long as your event follows our server guidelines, feel free to let your creativity go wild. These events could be things like a game night, trivia and quiz challenges, a watch party, culture night. They're all fun ways to connect with your fellow Golden Key members and keep the engagement flowing. Now, I'm not sure if many of you remember how to create a Discord event. So to create one, you may have to make sure you're in the Golden Key server. And at the top left, you'll see the Events tab. Once you click it, you'll see a Create Event button. Here, you'll decide which channel to host it in and provide more details on the event, such as the time and date, the topic, description, even a cover image. You can then review it and hit Create. I'd also like to remind everyone of the upcoming Career Summit on the 8th to the 12th of September. It'll touch on career development and helping you get ahead in your field. As ambassadors, I'd like for you to please spread the news, and remember, you don't have to be a member to attend this to go. If you're not a member, you won't receive the discounts. But I'll share the link to this in the chat after. To wrap up, being an ambassador is about more than just a title. Please try and reach out to your chapters and attend an event, or host your own Discord one, because Golden Key only grows when we take action. Let's go out and make an impact together.
And I will continue. I also just want to briefly mention the fact that whilst the Golden Key website, I'm pretty sure it does show all events. Just in case it doesn't, you may receive more approximate events to your email. For example, I received one from Golden Key Asia Pacific, because that's where I live, in the Asia Pacific, regarding the upcoming networking events. And I just want to mention that your not chapters, your local area may be putting on some events that aren't being shown there. So I would like to see anyone who's coming to the Adelaide one in particular, because I would really like to meet you. Today I'll be presenting on the subject of leadership through education, and I thought this quote from Samantha Power was quite potent regarding this subject, because she says that silence in the face of atrocity is not neutrality. Silence in the face of atrocity is acquiescence, and I think this is very important. When we engage with the public, and as ambassadors, that is sort of what the role of an ambassador is to do, is to engage with the public. We need to understand that we, as ambassadors of a honor society, are here because we are in the top 15% of our class, right? We must think, if we're not going to stand up for what's right, then who will? And I think, speaking non-politically here, foundationally, it is important to remember that science is something which is really about the truth of the world, and not standing up for the truth has drastic and dire consequences. So let's just continue this presentation. I'll quickly cover over the core golden key values which form the foundation of this presentation and your focus as an ambassador. I'll also briefly just touch on what we covered a few months back regarding the ontology of an ambassador. This is really to link back to the foundation level of what it means to be an ambassador and how that will relate to this topic. Number 3 is really about what you bring to the role, and to GK in particular as an ambassador. And I also just want to touch on as well why this subject is important, because I've sort of spouted to you a value statement, but what we really need to get at is why those values are important. And in particular, highlighting the fact that the education in and of itself is the goal. And there are drastic and dire consequences to not educating people on matters of fact. So, and the important thing regarding that is also to recognize that not all communication is, made equal. Let's just phrase it that way. And in order to do this kind of work properly requires us to understand how best we can approach the subject. So that's what's going to be covered last in this presentation. So first up is the values of Golden Key. Now, if you've gone online and had a look at the Golden Key seal, you'll see that there are 3 core values written onto the seal. A keen eye and a good internet connection may notice the 3 words held closest to the key in the center: leadership, academics, and service. When I was going through and redesigning the seal for our purposes on the new Golden Key Discord YouTube channel, I found these 3 words. Amazing what you can find as a tangent to your objective. But as I was putting the final touches on one of the assets, I thought it may be beneficial for us to actually have a look at what the core of our identity is as a group and what it means to be part of Golden Key. So first up is the value of leadership, and I particularly think this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche actually captures the essence of what this presentation is about, where he says, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." We'll cover what precisely that means, but I want you to have a brief moment to actually think about what Friedrich Nietzsche is trying to warn here, because yes, some of his some of his particular academic pursuits weren't particularly well regarded at his time. It's important to realize that everyone can contribute to the progression of science. And speaking on the matter of science is more broadly the field of academics. And again, I think Malcolm Forbes has it right here. The purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one. And combined with Friedrich Nietzsche's perspective, it's important to realize that someone who doesn't know any better can't be expected to, learn. And unfortunately, the world needs people who can learn more than ever. And finally, the 3rd value of Golden Key is service. To give real service, you must add something which cannot be bought or measured with money, and that is sincerity and integrity. And I think our organization as Golden Key in particular is one of those which needs to, which already acts with integrity and sincerity, but we need to sort of demonstrate that and make it public. So just to recap, ambassadors, as I previously mentioned in the June's Bootcamp, you have three primary ontological functions. Number 1, to represent community values. Number 2, to be a liminal being. And 3, to be a presence. These ontological functions only work properly for Golden Key when they are applied through the lens of the values of the institution we all represent. Let's have a brief reminder of what each of the ontological functions means and the values that underpin their implementation before we move on. So number 1 here, to embody community values, is really to state that a community is little more than a code of normative practice or values without the people that make it up. It's critically important that we focus on the community as the end goal here. An ambassador needs to demonstrate a community spirit and thus become the framework for the future. Number 2, to be a liminal being. A community is both an assembly of individuals, as a community is, but it's also a collective voice in the wider public. Your role as an ambassador is to intermediate both within and without this community. It should also be mentioned as well that this collective voice doesn't necessarily mean that we are united. It just means that we stand behind a common purpose. And number 3, to be a presence. An ambassador generates discussion, interaction, and engagement. Your role asks you to foster relationships in the community and to build the resilience necessary to weather all trials. And I think it's important that we take this perspective and share it with others. And again, you'll see that this is a common theme across this presentation. But today, we're going to explore a more practical approach through which you as ambassadors can demonstrate these values that you see on the left here for the benefit of our community through the ontology of being an ambassador. And those values, just to recap on the left there, are integrity, collaboration, innovation, respect, diversity, excellence, and engagement. So let's just briefly recap what you bring as a member of Golden Key. Inherently. As members of Golden Key, we all represent the top 15% of our various classes in a multitude of subjects, from computer science to medicine to journalism to philosophy and a whole lot more. This, I believe, is supported by a willingness on the part of the majority here to learn and adapt to what life throws at you, to work hard to bring about a better future. But what is all this for? You've got brains, you've got a growth mindset, but what are we really building to? In the most simple extrapolation, you almost certainly at least have a degree's worth of ambition to fulfill as well. And that's an academic degree, mind you, because you spent at least 3 years to get your to get your place here in Golden Key. Whether you're continuing to complete or have finished like I have, it's important to realize that you had a purpose to going to university or college or whatever you want to call it, because for whatever reason Americans and the British have different perspectives on what to call their institutions. But fundamentally it's the same. You have ambition, whether for yourself or for others or society at large. Whatever this ambition is, I believe your presence here as a member of Golden Key represents your conviction to its achievement. With this ambition, Golden Key mission is to assist you in reaching it. However, our focus today is on the way I believe ambassadors should act to fulfill our collective ambition, which is exemplified by our group's values of leadership, service, and academics. I think it is best to state this organizational ambition as the wish to educate and promote a growth mindset in our engagements with the community, both within and without. And if by some miracle you are yet unsure as to what your life's goal should be, which, mind you, arguably speaking, I don't, besides broad aspects, I ask you to legitimately consider this righteous cause of science education. So, but why am I talking about this now? So, fundamentally, problem number 1, I think most of us have noticed, is that, yes, social media that we've got now is amazing for interaction and communication, but it's become very toxic, and in many cases it promulgates misinformation through naive algorithms, namely, for the purpose of attention. It's also important to recognize that some subjects are not well understood in the wider public consciousness. Consider subjects like civics, chemistry, astronomy, history, and computer science. This leads to both natural misconceptions and deliberate attempts to deceive for political or commercial benefit. Artificial intelligence only serves to exacerbate these matters, and models are only getting better. Therefore, We cannot expect the public to see fact through fiction on topics of complexity. So who is going to lead this discussion? So what I'm really asking for here and debating here in this presentation is whether you as an ambassador are ready to engage in debate and act in the interests of science and the truth, to lead the public at large towards a truthful view of reality, in service of the greater good. Now, whilst Milo, who's a very well-known YouTuber on topics of archaeology and science education, talks specifically in this video about science communication and its importance to preserving fact over fiction, I feel that the same idea applies to any field of academics or study. I believe that you as an ambassador for an academic society should always represent and debate on the side of truth, and helping us build a good image for both the society and academia at large. There is nothing worse than an ignorant public demanding impossible change or asserting the reality of a matter which is categorically false. Thus, education, in my view, is the best way we have to help solve these problems, and should thus be the goal.
Okay, so what's the problem? Yeah, I had fun with that one too. I know, it's a good one. So what's the problem with this? This is another question that I see all the time. Quickly following the question of people being like, oh, Milo, why you gotta be such a buzzkill? It is, what's wrong with this? What really is the problem with people thinking, whatever that is? And honestly, I'm gonna be totally real, that's a very fair question. This isn't about the pyramids. This isn't about giants. This is about what is true and what is false. It is a simple difference between fact and fiction. By perpetuating these theories and by claiming that the big archaeological deep state is out to get you, it is, rather foolishly, still undermining actual science. This is a way of slowly getting the general public to no longer believe the words that are coming out of a scientific body. Again, a scientific body that is not homogeneous. It is an interdisciplinary body. It spans across political borders. This is not a matter of politics. This is a matter of truth and fiction. But these theories begin to undermine and corrode the trust within the scientific process, which can lead to some disastrous results. Okay, so what do we do? This is Milo doom and gloom for the first 40 minutes, but now is the fun part. We get to build it all back up again. So now I get to, get all peppy up here, limber up a little, and talk about how we fix the sinking ship. I think there's actually a lot that we can learn from pseudo-archaeology, which sounds a little bit ridiculous after the last lecture that I've been giving, but I actually do think that there are some things that the scientific world and any of us who are interested in fact should actually kind of take away from it. One, people are interested in archaeology. That's pretty nice. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone. Anyone who didn't grow up, I don't know a single person who didn't grow up watching Indiana Jones. And because of that, there is a large public desire to learn more about archaeology. But there are currently very few reliable and easily accessible sources for the public to go to actually learn about archaeology. We need to focus on science communication. That's the big takeaway here. I'm going to get into my whole science communication speech now, but this is the single most important thing that we have on our side. It is the ability for science to connect with the public, for science to be able to take what we learn and be able to relay it to those who do not need to make the effort to read our scientific papers. It should not be their job to do that. Social media is the biggest classroom ever created. At the time of me making this video, this is roughly how many views I have on my channel. That is 500 million. And in the grand scheme of things, my channel isn't even really that big when compared to some of the other ones. But in the educational sphere, it is up there. And so this really illustrates the fact that we are able to overcome many of the bottlenecks that traditional education has by using social media. Now don't get me wrong, social media is something that science has been pretty reluctant to kind of adopt, and I almost don't really blame them, because when I think social media, I think like TikTok dances and kids eating like cinnamon and stuff like that. But you can have millions of people watching kids eating cinnamon, so why don't we do something better with it? And this is an example of that. This is, stands to suggest just how far-reaching any topic online can have if it's good enough to engage with an audience. Firstly, by recognizing the fact that many of us are, any of us who are able to sit in this classroom today or have sat in a classroom before are immensely privileged, we can take what we have learned in these classrooms and take it as our responsibility to share it with the public. It should not be up to every individual to go to university to learn about the things they're interested in. And it should not be up to every individual who didn't get the chance to go to the university to have to sift through pseudoscience based on their own, understanding and judgment calls in order to get actual real information. So, because of this, we have to identify the fact that academia can feel like something that's inaccessible to some people. And I hear a lot, people being like, they say academia is an ivory tower, and I don't think it's an ivory tower, but frankly, I don't care what you think. If other people think academia is an ivory tower, it may as well be, because that is going to keep them away from it. So it is our responsibility, no matter what we may think about it, to kick the door down and make it a place that is open for them. Because of this, even if people are feeling like it is, an ivory tower, it will drive them away. So what are we going to do? Are we going to just watch them leave and be like, well, they shouldn't have thought that? Or are we going to make an effort to reach out our hand and bring them into the fold so that they can have the same things that we have learned here? Science needs generalists. Generalists are immensely capable of communicating science to the general public. I think that this is something which, I'm very proud of in what I do, where I have a hard time sort of putting myself into a box of exactly what it is I do, because I have so many interests that I like, so many things that I kind of have that little bit of water in each pail that I can pull from and apply to give the general public an idea of a broad, complex topic without having to go into the nuance of every single little detail. And because of that, generalists can act as an excellent intermediary between the very kind of heady, complex places of science and the general public. I think that it's also unfair for the general public, or for the kind of heady academic area to kind of look down at people who may not be as adept to understanding the things that they process. I said this earlier, and I want to emphasize it again, that it should not be up to the general public to read scientific papers to educate themselves on science. That is ridiculous. It is a skill to even understand scientific papers. I have to take classes on learning about scientific papers. You do not need to do that in order to know, the things that are, the most important to the world. But a generalist can act as an intermediary where the public doesn't also need to know the level of complex detail going on in, the tower of academia. In doing this, we allow for the public to get a greater understanding of complex topics, because as science tends towards specialization, it also begins to isolate itself from the public. That problem we were talking about earlier of the closed doors of academia is exacerbated as people begin to feel like academia is something that they couldn't even understand if they wanted to. Nobody wants to read all of the chemistry papers or the biotechnology papers, but they might be a lot more receptive to someone who's boiling that down and putting it into words that they understand. And if we do not, continue to put that emphasis onto generalists who are able to kind of translate and act as that intermediary, it can drive people right towards pseudoscientists, because pseudoscience has no problem in saying whatever they want, and if those are the only people speaking in those fields, those are the things that people are going to listen to. Here's big takeaway. Don't underestimate any of your powers as a generalist. How many of you here tonight are undergrads? Wow, okay, excellent. Then this is going to be potent. My undergrad friends in the audience tonight, I was sitting exactly where all of you were sitting just 2 years ago, which is terrifying. When I was sitting where you are sitting right now, I had no idea what I was doing with my life, and I thought no matter what I chose to do, I was going to be underqualified for it. But I want to speak to all of you to let you know that when you graduate from this university, no matter what your major is in, you will have a deeper level of understanding in many of these topics, in any of these topics, than most of the general public will. Even with a bachelor's degree, or even if you don't even complete it, you will have a much greater understanding of topics that are something that most people don't fully understand. And that puts you at a perfect opportunity to be a generalist. Someone who can take whatever level of education you have and communicate complex things to those who have not had the opportunity to even sit in one of these classrooms. And that's something that I think is really important. Again, I'm working currently in a field where I was told that there is no reason to even do it because no one will take me seriously unless I have a PhD. And I am standing here right now. So believe me when I say that there is an immense amount of need for people with the skill set of a generalist, people who are interested in a wide variety of different things. I want to open this up to those who are not undergrads, to the rest of the audience here tonight, and say that the same thing applies for all of you. All of you have been able to compile interests and things that you love. All of you have been able to interpret information that you have been presented with, which puts all of you in the exact same position of you can communicate these topics to the general public. And this could be anything. I'm using obviously the lens of archaeology and natural sciences, but things like medicine, things like history, things like biology, the different parts of technology. I use the example of, a phone and how that works. All of you are a specialist in something. And the difficulty is most people are never going to go through the same level to learn about a certain specialty as you already have, which puts you at the perfect position to be that link, to create that bridge between the ivory tower of academia and the public, who is the one who actually needs to learn from it. I have a few final notes here that I want to give. One, stand up for scientific fact. It is more important now than ever. This is something which all of us have seen ourselves. It is something I recognize constantly with my work, and all of us need to be united in standing against pseudoscience and misinformation. Second, open the doors to people who feel shut out. If there are people who are tending towards pseudoscience, make them feel as though science is not something that has closed their doors to them. That's why I began this presentation by talking about how I have nothing against people who listen to these theories and who find them interesting. It's those that perpetuate them and to prey on people who don't know any better that I have a problem with. So be that person who can open the door to someone who may not have the same level of understanding that you do. Thirdly, don't undersell your qualifications. This one goes especially out to the undergrads out there. Whatever grade you are in right now, whether you are a freshman or a senior, you probably have a greater understanding of whatever your discipline is than most people do. And that puts you in the perfect position to be able to help educate them as well. And last, I'm gonna go a little cheesy with you guys here. You can make a difference. I heard this one a lot, I really did. And this is one of those things where it's like, just believe in yourself. And you hear it all the time, you're like, shut up. But I really do mean this, I really do. I think that there is, no one should undervalue the impact you can make as a single individual.
That's number one. So now, these problems aren't insurmountable, but sometimes the roadblocks can be quite large, and unfortunately can be made quite a lot bigger by simple ignorance, something you as ambassadors can fix. Being that liminal being, or to phrase it another way, that bridge, offers a perspective not afforded to many, options, and the time to choose which to exploit and which to bury. Some are going to be opportunities, and others are going to be threats to your goals. Choosing which complex problems to tackle, whether it is for the goal of communication to the public or to inform further decision-making, and which way to tackle it, represents difficult subjects to pass, and could be the subject of a whole other bootcamp session. But just to belabor the point a bit further, I want to be crystal clear about the dangers of not properly educating. So I've extracted a brief moment from a Mentor Pilot's video for us to watch, which exemplifies the problem explicitly. If you're interested about the story surrounding this clip, please search up the title on YouTube. It is quite a fascinating and unfortunately tragic story for many. Which again does mean that there are references to people who have died, so if you are somewhat sensitive to that, be warned.
In order to do that, we often follow decision-making models like Fordek or Piozzi, which helps us to structure our decision-making and clearly identify the problem, gather information, choose and execute the best option, and then evaluate. But that's of course impossible when dealing with a commanding force who isn't backed up by any knowledge, reason or common sense, only violence. These hijackers had chosen to operate from a place of fear and never from a place of facts. And in a situation like that, even the most professional of pilots would not be able to make much of a difference really. But that didn't stop Captain Leold from trying. Now before we go on, let me just stop here for a second to point something out. Even though this is a horrible example of a crime being committed, I cannot keep myself from seeing parallels to the world that we live in today, where far too many of us make important decisions based on rumors, trends, or conspiracy theories instead of facts. Actually, this cockpit is almost a perfect reflection of where the scientific community finds itself today, being told what to do by politicians with no background in science or knowledge of their field. As pilots, we live and die based on the rules of physics, decades of experience and correct application of leadership and procedures, so we operate in a world where it's still all about doing what is right, not just follow who is speaking. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this industry so much.
So, when people operate from a place of fear, they are not thinking, and when they must, they rationalize to maintain their worldview. It is not acceptable for anyone to live in fear, whether it is fear of the government, whose main purpose in a liberal democracy is their well-being, or of their neighbor, whether proximate or remote. Fear is maintained on ignorance. Fear is what drives hatred and division. Education, however, develops independence in those it manifests. It develops critical thinking skills to notice the strawman arguments and subtle innuendo of pseudo-intellectual talking points, which underline the core of fear-based tactics. Toxic behavior can be diffused with objective fact, realigning discussion with what is, rather than with what could be. One moment. No, we don't want to do that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, what have we learned? Number 1, a leader can only effectively lead those who understand and comprehend the course of action being taken. Much like Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, action is seldomly perceived as rational when the underlying factors are not well understood. This tends to lead to dissent. A leader operating without reason, on point number 2, or fact, is rigid and one-dimensional. Usually, problem-solving will suffer when ignorance begets a sense of isolation. When a situation feels isolating, individuals feel set on their chosen course of action, and cooperation becomes much more difficult. And finally, the wider public suffers, unfortunately, from a lack of domain knowledge on many technical subjects. Pseudo-intellectuals can take advantage of this to promote prima facie, or in other words, on the face of it, plausible content or arguments which is not supported, and could in fact be very harmful. Unfortunately, but somewhat beneficially for us, social media is the largest classroom humanity has made. It is therefore important that we move to exploit it, as it has largely been left unexploited. So, if ignorance goes unaddressed, the fabric of wider society is put at great risk. We, as an academic society, should have a duty and a responsibility to promote the values which are in the best interest of the society, and your role as an ambassador can help with that. When you engage with the public, I urge you to identify and engage in conversations with people who hold diverse viewpoints. Your goal is to do as Socrates of old did, the Socratic method. Challenge their beliefs and help to develop the critical thinking skills in others necessary to engage with complex topics. When in a debate with others, always remain factual and objective. To be objective does not mean to present both sides. It means to ensure that all participants remain grounded in the truth. Ambassadors are also a presence in the community, and that presence can inherit subtext. Ensure that the subtext you generate in this community remains positive. Remember that you are not attacking the person for their views, you are assessing and engaging the viewpoint itself. No one appreciates an ad hominem attack. Your interactions online in your capacity as an ambassador set an example for the rest of the community, and inform outsiders' views about what our society and its members believe in. We aim to be inclusive and inspire people to action. We cannot do that if our representatives drive away the masses. If someone presents an incorrect view, engage to correct and inform them. As ambassadors, your example is the core of our perceived identity. Finally, I'd like to thank you. If there are any questions, I can take them now. Okay. So just to clarify again, let me just press all the buttons. Golden Key is separated into multiple regions. You've got Golden Key America, you've got Golden Key Canada, Golden Key South Africa, and Golden Key Asia Pacific. Have I missed one? Probably. What's the last one? But whatever they are, it's important to realize that they host their own events, and as Julia has pointed out, do not usually communicate with the head office regarding what events they put on. So it's important to make reference to the fact that you may need to go looking through your emails for references to events that they're putting on. In this case, I would like to remind people in the Asia Pacific region that on the 18th of September of this year and the 23rd of September this year, GK Asia Pacific are putting on events in Melbourne and Adelaide for networking purposes. Yes, I've got them all. Good. Golden Key US, Golden Key Asia Pacific, Golden Key Canada, and Golden Key South Africa. So yes, it is, I wouldn't say important, but I would say it would be lovely to see people at these events. Again, I'll be attending the Adelaide one this year, so I hope to meet anyone who will be turning up. So yes, I think that is it from me. I also just want to quickly reference the fact that the Golden Key Career Summit, which is coming up again on the 8th to the 12th of September, also now has a list of keynote speakers, and all the sessions are now populated with information. So if you would like to go through this, we can, yes, we can. You can see what sessions are on and plan accordingly for which ones you want to attend. If there's anything else, any other questions, we can cover them now.